It is Country Viewpoint here on Flow FM, and it's time for us now to catch up with the member for Stuart, also the South Australian Minister for Mining and Energy, Dan van Holst Pellekaan, back again. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, going well, Jason, going well, and lovely to be with you on Flow again. Thank you.
Great to have you on. We've got some really good news to tell people. They've been following the announcements as they've been coming through over the last week or so. It looks as though now that interconnector between South Australia and New South Wales will absolutely go ahead. Electra have ticked it off?
Yes, they have. Electra, which is the transmission company on the South Australian side of the grid, signed it off and announced yesterday that they're proceeding. And Transgrid, the transmission company on the New South Wales side of the border, did the same last Monday. And so those two companies have both committed that they will build this interconnector. It is outstanding news for South Australia and New South Wales.
Now, this will, first of all, lead the investment that both companies will have to put forward into this. I think we're talking about $2 billion or just over. On the South Australian side, Electranet, nearly $500 million they'll be investing into this. So it's not a small project by any scope.
No, it's a massive project, $2.3 billion in total, and in fact it is the largest infrastructure project in the history of the Australian national energy market. It's a massive step forward. It's good not only for the two states which are directly connected, but it certainly helps Victoria and Queensland as well. We are sort of becoming more and more connected with each other, able to swap and share both our surplus supply and our surplus demand. But of course, South Australia and New South Wales will be the largest beneficiaries of this.
Is it fair to say that this is almost the last link in the chain? I mean, we obviously don't have an interconnector with Queensland, but New South Wales does. So this sort of links it all up.
You're quite right. New South Wales in fact, has two interconnectors with Queensland and is also connected to Victoria. Victoria is connected to New South Wales, South Australia and Tasmania, and we're at the end of the line with just one interconnector to Victoria at the moment. So as soon as we get this interconnector up and running in 2023 with New South Wales, then instead of being at the end of the line on the national electricity grid, we're actually part of the loop, and there are so many more opportunities that you can offer, which help improve stability and help continue to push electricity costs down for South Australians, and of course optimise renewable energy so that we have less pollution, less emissions as well.
Well, you've touched on what was my next question already there with that response, and that is why? Why is this such good news, and how will it help to drive power prices down, the idea of this interconnector? And is it simply a case of being able to buy and share electricity when the going is good in particular states?
Yeah, well, look, it's a bit of all of that, and I'll try and give a useful description, just a short summary. First of all, you look at the volume of electricity, and there are times where you've got spare and you don't know what to do with it. So we can now sell our surplus electricity into New South Wales, the largest market in the state, as well as currently being able to do it into Victoria. There'll be times we'll be pleased to import some electricity. If we need a bit extra coming in, we'll be very pleased to be able to do that from New South Wales and Victoria rather than just Victoria. And of course, having that choice means that you can sell into a higher priced market and earn more money, and you can also buy from a lower priced market and save yourself some money. And you can only do that if you've got two choices. So there's an opportunity there. Also, we are absolutely outstanding in South Australia at generating renewable energy. We're a world leader in that regard because of our abundant wind and sun and space. But we can only absorb so much of that ourselves into South Australia and into Victoria. So to be able to continue producing more and more renewable energy, we need another market for it to go to. And we will export far, far more renewable energy from South Australia into New South Wales than we'll ever import from there. There'll be times we'll be glad to get their electricity. But we will be able to create new generators in South Australia, thousands of jobs, billions of dollars of investment, and we'll be able to export that electricity into New South Wales and support their decarbonisation as well, because they've got coal power stations shutting down. They've got gas power stations coming towards the end of their lives. So while we can sell into New South Wales, we're helping them replace some of that electricity. And of course, with renewable energy, we'll have gas with us for a long time in South Australia, less and less. We're already operating at 60% renewable energy, 40% gas. That will continue to move with more renewables and less gas. But we'll have some gas because that'll be necessary to keep us going for quite a while. But it'll be less and less of it over time. So prices going down, emissions going down, renewable energy penetration increasing, and very importantly, a more stable grid. And this is the last sort of piece of the puzzle at a summary level, as well as moving electricity back and forth. Interconnectors are incredibly valuable tools to help with voltage control and frequency control. We all know that we need electricity at 240 volts and 50 hertz. And if it gets out of that, then the electricity will actually damage everything from your kettle all the way through to the lead smelter at Port Pirie. So the system, if it gets out of whack with voltage or frequency, actually shuts itself down to avoid that potential damage. What you can do with an interconnector and a grid-scale battery, by the way, is you can pump massive amounts of electricity into the grid or suck massive amounts out of the grid within milliseconds and correct your voltage and your frequency. So that's a great tool to avoid blackouts that you would otherwise have had in a self-trip to protect the consumers.
So it's a win in so many different ways and areas. So the timeline on this project now, I believe, Dan, it'll start being constructed from both sides at the same time, and you'll meet in the middle. Is that the plan?
Actually, I think it's a bit the other way around. I think I think that the current plan is that in New South Wales they're actually going to start at the border. They're going to start at each end and work together.
Oh, right.
And work towards the middle of New South Wales.
That is the exact opposite. You're right. Yeah.
Yes, but look, they're still working out some of those details. But the bottom line is construction will start this year. Construction will start before the end of 2021, and commissioning will start in 2023. That's the firm commitment from both of the companies, and that is a very good timeline. We've actually spent or committed over $70 million of taxpayers' money to get some early work done because we wanted to keep this on a really fast timeline so that consumers get the benefits as soon as possible. Now that this project is going ahead, we'll get all of that money back because it is early work of the actual project itself. Given the project is going ahead, that work becomes part of the project. We'll get our money back or taxpayers' money back. But we've done that deliberately to keep the project on as quick a timeline as possible because we want it to work for South Australians and New South Wales people, of course, too, as quickly as possible. And as I said, commissioning 2023, Jason.
Makes sense to invest in that, particularly when there'll be some jobs created, particularly once that construction gets underway. So from both sides, there'll be a significant amount of jobs created for building those, for building the line as it comes through the next couple of years.
You're 100% right, Jason. The construction of the line, of course, there's thousands of jobs in that, direct and indirect. But on top of that, we've got the new renewable energy generation projects that will be built in South Australia. So around Robertstown, around Morgan, around Barra, those projects which have just been sitting and waiting for the interconnector to be confirmed so that they can build their generators in roughly the same timeline as the interconnector is being built, so that when the interconnector is built, they can then start to generate and export their electricity and earn their returns on that. And of course, by doing that, consumers get the benefit of the interconnector as soon as possible too. So absolutely outstanding that we've got the new generation and the new interconnector being built at the same time, so the benefits come as quickly as possible.
Brilliant. It's a great project, the Interconnector, and we're going to talk more about it in the future. But before we go, I caught up with one of your counterparts and colleagues, Peter Treloar, earlier on. He was very, very pleased with Electranet's move to fix up the transmission line on Eyre Peninsula, which has been a long time coming. I'd imagine you'd be pretty pleased with this as well, Dan.
Yeah, I am. And look, Peter Treloar is an outstanding member of Parliament and a very, very good friend as well. You couldn't ask for a better MP. And he and I and many others have been working with Electranet and with the Australian Energy Regulator to get this work up. And it will make a huge difference to the Eyre Peninsula and Port Lincoln and other communities. You probably do remember, because I know what a close connection you've got with Port Lincoln yourself, Jason, but when under Labor we had the statewide blackout, Port Lincoln was actually up for, I think it was 4 or 5 days.
I remember it very well, Dan.
Yeah. Sorry to bring that dim, dark old former government memory back to you, but yes, and this is about the fact that perhaps in the same way I was describing South Australia is currently at the end of the line and the fragility that goes with that. Within South Australia, Port Lincoln has been sort of at the end of the line and has had a fragile local transmission grid, and we're fixing that up with a brand new transmission line down the Eyre Peninsula.
Yeah, Sejuna as well. The benefits it's going to have for all of the Eyre Peninsula
Correct.
Is fantastic. So
You're absolutely right.
It's been a long time coming. I think a lot of this investment at Electranet, clearly they feel confident enough to invest in South Australia, which is another key plank in all of this, because companies like that don't just throw money or bad money after good.
Yeah, look, you're quite right. They are essential services. They have obligations to the public to deliver services that we need. But they are also private companies that are owned by investors, mum and dad investors and corporate investors. They all need to get a return. The Australian Energy Regulator oversees that return to make sure that it's a fair return on the investment, but not an unfair return on the electricity consumer. And it is terrific to see us taking so many positive steps forward in South Australia in the last few years with regard to energy. And you're quite right, it's a great place to invest. We're seeing that when we attract those investment dollars into sensible infrastructure projects and electricity consumers, whether they be small households, small businesses, medium, large businesses, they are the winners.
All right. Well, Dan, we'll let you get back into the chamber. I know Parliament is sitting at the moment. Appreciate your time this afternoon here on Country Viewpoint, and all the best.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you to everybody at Flow FM.